Let's jump right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are exploring a massive, literal game changer in human history, the Axial Age, and its two complementary directions of inquiry. This is that incredible moment in time where humanity basically said, okay, enough blaming everything on the unpredictable whims of the ancient gods, and we actually started searching for a natural underlying order to reality. So to get started, take a look at these two ultimate questions. Who am I, and what is the world? Now, these aren't just your standard late-night dorm room philosophy prompts. No, these two questions literally launched two parallel, totally distinct journeys of human thought. During the Axial Age, different civilizations suddenly started asking these exact questions with a level of rigor that we had never, ever seen before. One question, right, it pulls your focus entirely inward, deep into your own mind, and the other, it pushes your focus entirely outward, out into the vast physical universe. But before human thought split off onto those two different paths, both traditions actually shared one absolutely crucial starting point, and that was a complete departure from purely mythological explanations. Both the Indian and the Greek traditions, working at the exact same time but totally independently, they both decided that the old stories just weren't cutting anymore. They realized, hey, you simply cannot build a reliable understanding of reality if you think every single lightning bolt or drought is just the arbitrary mood swing of a god. They wanted predictability, they wanted truth, they wanted to figure out the actual mechanics of existence, completely free from myths. Which brings us to Section 1, India, the Inward Journey, also known as the Hindu Axial Age. Early Vedic thinkers kicked this off by looking for underlying principles, but where this journey ended up is what's truly mind-blowing. Because the radical pivot that happened next is just amazing. So initially, ancient Indian thought was kind of focused on the external cosmos, right? Understanding the universe so you could align with it. But as this intellectual movement matured into the texts we now call the Upanishads, the focus underwent this dramatic, massive shift. They basically stopped looking out and they started looking in. They took their entire analytical machinery, pivoted away from the external cosmos, and aimed directly at the inner self. The sages of the Upanishads completely reframed the whole inquiry of existence. Instead of asking, well, what's the world made of? They asked a question that is honestly incredibly profound. They asked, who is the one who experiences the world? Really think about that for a second. Before you can objectively measure a tree or a star or any physical object, you have to account for the actual instrument doing the measuring. And what is that instrument? It's your own awareness. They realized that the observer is the ultimate bottleneck for all reality. And that exact line of questioning led to a massive breakthrough, the concept of Ātman. Simply put, Ātman represents consciousness itself as the fundamental reality. For these thinkers, the physical world, well, it might be temporary, always shifting, maybe even an illusion. But the pure consciousness that observes it all, that is foundational. That is what's actually real. It was an absolutely revolutionary way to understand existence. So how did this play out in real life? Because this wasn't just abstract armchair theory, this changed how people actually lived and practiced their spirituality, evolving in three very distinct steps. It started with step 1, external rituals, known as karma-kāṇḍa. This was all about doing physical actions in the world to get a specific result. But as that inward journey deepened, it evolved into step 2, philosophical inquiry, or jñāna-kāṇḍa. Those external actions gave way to internal meditation, rigorous mental discipline, and ultimately step 3, true self-realization. True liberation, they figured out, wasn't found out on a physical altar. It was found completely within. And that brings us to the grand, jaw-dropping culmination of the Indian Axial Age. The great mind-bending secret they unlocked by going so intensely inward is famously captured in the Sanskrit phrase, Tat Tvam Asi, which translates to, thou art that. It's this profound realization that Ātman is Brahman. Basically, that the individual self, that pure consciousness we just talked about, is fundamentally identical to the universal reality. By looking as deeply inward as humanly possible, they literally found the fabric of the entire universe. It is such a beautiful, unifying conclusion to their specific direction of inquiry. All right, let's pivot to Section 2, Greece, the outward journey, or the Greek Axial Age. Because while India was closing its eyes in meditation to map the inner world, Greece was opening its eyes wider and wider to map the outer world. To map that outer world, the Greeks replaced the arbitrary actions of the gods with what they called logos. Logos represents systematic, observable principles governed by reason. Now, they didn't completely toss out their religion overnight, but early Greek philosophers decided that nature operated by consistent rules. And crucially, they believed these were rules that a human mind could actually deduce through logic and reason, rather than just waiting around for divine revelation. And this brings us to an absolute powerhouse roster of thinkers: Thales, Anaximander, Heraclitus, Parmenides, and Democritus. Their mission wasn't to look inward at the self at all. Nope, they wanted to look outward and identify the fundamental substance of the cosmos. And they were frankly obsessed with physical reality. Like, there's this great historical anecdote about Thales where he was so busy looking up at the stars, studying the heavens, that he actually fell straight down into a well. But hey, despite the occasional workplace hazard, these pioneers pushed boundaries. Democritus, for instance, gave us the earliest theories of atoms. They were absolutely determined to figure out what the physical world is fundamentally made of. Now, to do this, they basically had to invent a brand new toolkit. Their methods of inquiry relied heavily on strict observation of the natural world, constructing really rigorous logical arguments, and searching for universal laws. The thinking was, if a rule applies to a rock dropping to the ground right here, it should apply to a rock dropping everywhere. This outward-looking inquiry demanded that any claims about reality had to be observable, testable through logic, and universally applicable. And I really can't overstate this. This specific methodology is the exact origin point of the modern world as we know it today. By rigorously applying logos, that combo of observation, logic, and universal laws to the external world, these Greek thinkers laid the absolute bedrock foundations for mathematics, natural philosophy, and what would eventually become modern science. Seriously, the very technology you're using to listen to this explainer right now, it is the direct linear descendant of this exact outward Greek inquiry. Which brings us to our final part, Section 3, 2 paths, 1 reality, and the modern synthesis. Because history, right, it isn't just about picking one side or the other. It's about seeing how these two complementary halves make a complete whole. So on one side, we have India, asking, who am I? And mastering the domains of consciousness, selfhood, and ultimate liberation by seeking the ground of experience deep inside the self. And on the flip side, we have Greece, asking, what is the world? And mastering the domains of nature, causality, and objective knowledge by looking outward to find the actual structure of reality. Together, they represent the two enduring foundations of all philosophy, the inner world and the outer world. So why does all this ancient history actually matter to you right now? Well, because as modern humans, we are the inheritors of both of these incredible legacies. A truly complete understanding of reality requires both of them. We absolutely need the rigorous scientific inquiry gifted to us by the Greeks, right? We needed to cure diseases, build our infrastructure, and understand the cosmos. But without the profound self-understanding and the focus on consciousness championed by the Indian tradition, we run the massive risk of wielding all that incredible scientific power without any wisdom, purpose, or internal peace. We really need the synthesis of both perspectives to be complete. Which leaves us with a final, very personal thought for you to chew on today. In your own life, right now, are you spending more time exploring the universe, the external world, your career, your social feeds, the objective reality all around you? Or are you spending time exploring the mind that actually perceives all of it? Finding the balance between those two questions, well, that's the ultimate legacy of the Axial Age. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this sparks some curiosity for you, and I will catch you on the next one.